Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Everyday Woo, the place where we talk about the magical side of life with everyday people. I'm Amy from Cultivating Silence, and my guest today is Cullen Wheeler. Cullen is an actor, a husband, a father, and a beautiful spiritual human being, as you can maybe tell by the background. And today we are going to find out about Cullen's experiences with the woo. But first, we'll say hi. Hi, Colin. How are you today?
Hi, and I really thought we were going to be talking about the correct way to rewire a lamp today. So
Whoops.
I'm a little bit lost, but I'll catch up, okay?
Okay, very good. Hey, that could have some woo experiences, rewiring a lamp. You never know.
Yes, you get really shocked.
Yes.
Okay. So,
I like to start out asking people what their definition of the woo is.
well, I think um and for different people there are different ways of experiencing it. So, and I've known people who uh usually people who are like visual artists and things, they actually see things more than others. Either, they see lights or they see patterns or they see, in vision, they see in pictures
Mhm.
when they're in meditation. That's their thing. Other people are like myself. I feel things. So I feel things in my body. Um, and then also when I'm in meditation, besides just feeling in my body, and we can talk about, specifics later, but just in general, I either feel tingles or pressure or something in some part of my body, or um, I don't hear voices per se, although some people do. I mean, they actually do hear voices, and they're not crazy. Um, I am aware of phrases, and it's in my own mind speaking to me, but the phrases come to me or word comes to me that I find beneficial and leading me in some other direction or revealing something to me that I hadn't thought of. So,
Beautiful.
and then also the other way that I thought we would discuss it today, in the way that I experience it, is I've become very much, or I've become more open to synchronicity
Ah, yeah.
and recognizing all the synchronicity that has happened in my life. I mean, now as I'm older, and you can look back, you can go, oh, okay, that's why that happened. And you and I have talked about this over the years quite a bit, but that's why that person came into my life, or that's why that opportunity came into my life, because I needed that to continue my spiritual growth.
Mm.
Uh, and um, sometimes uh, they come into your life and they're there briefly. Sometimes they're only momentarily, just some incident during the day.
Mhm.
And sometimes they start out red hot and then become over the years beautiful friendships. And so there's, the intensity. Oh, I've met somebody who understands me. They get me and I get them. And we're on this journey together and it's going to be a life journey. And then it's like a journey that's, you know, a couple of years of really intense, and then it matures and it becomes something where you reinforce each other. I have many relationships like that in my life,
Yeah.
that that and when I talk to people that I had this relationship with, you know many years ago, where we were just simpatico guys and women, and we shared ideas and we were very excited about it, and then we, life happened and we drifted apart. But every one of these people, when we end up talking to each other, it's like we never stopped talking.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's just the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
And I had a call the other day with a friend. Her husband died tragically. And we grew up together, went through, high school, went through middle school and high school and very close. And so, we were talking and she goes, and I haven't talked to her since we graduated from high school.
Wow.
And she was like, this is so weird. It's like like, it's just like I talked to you last week. And I went, yeah, that's kind of, if you have my connections anyway, work that way. It just never ends.
So each of these things that you're describing are you would put into the category of the woo.
Yes, because I think everything in the woo is spiritual. To start out, let's do something I think I did with you years ago. You might remember this, but it's an experience experiment.
Okay.
So those of you who are playing at home, I want you to put your hands out like this and just let them be there. And do you feel a tingle in between them already? Do you feel it? Just move them back and forth a little bit. Does it feel like magnets that are repelling each other? You can feel it. All right, let's just be quiet and I'll let you concentrate on it. Well, just let it go. Be open to it. Feel that energy field in between your hands.
Yes, I can feel it. I felt it right away.
And you can spread your hands out and it keeps going. See? All right. So play with that later. But why is that there? Why did you, if you've never done that before, why do you feel that energy? Now, that energy is all around your body because your body is basically one big biochemical battery. We feed it, we rest it, we exercise it to keep it going. We do all of those things, but it's a biochemical battery.
And when
You
you say battery, you're talking about electricity.
you are correct. It is, you do have electrical impulses that make your arms move and your brain work and so on and so forth. But it's more than that
Okay.
because in that biochemical soup, there is something, if you accept it, if you're not totally like everything has to be explained, there is consciousness. And if you want to go back to science, the laws of thermodynamics tell us that energy never can be destroyed. It just becomes something else. So if you've got all of this energy that is being created by your body all the time, and then the body dies, what happens to the consciousness? Because that's energy too. It's thought. Thought is energy. It can be measured. When they hook the things up to your head, they're measuring your thoughts. You get the little squiggly lines.
Let me
So,
ask you, may I ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really want to ask, I know it's by your setting, we all know that you're a Christian. So
yes,
do
I
you,
am a I am an I am a mystical Christian though.
okay. So maybe that answered my question, but I really want you to talk about it. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Interesting. Um,
And what is a mystical Christian? Both of those questions.
okay. Uh, Reincarnation. What is reincarnation? Um, Gosh. All right. I am a mystical Christian. I'll answer the first question. I answer the second question first, and then maybe that will inform the answer to the first question.
Great.
So, um, a mystical Christian is someone who believes that we are all on a spiritual path, that we are all little pieces of God floating around, which is a that are and our job is to come back to the whole. Now, if you've ever and to tell you the truth, the why I make a distinction between mystical Christian and institutional Christian
Okay.
is even though I am part of an institutional church here, this is an Episcopal church on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It's beautiful, and I'm part of the leadership here, not lay leadership. I'm not a priest. I'm not any of the deacon or any of those things, but I help take care of the place.
Nice.
And the reason why I'm an Episcopal is because Episcopals welcome everybody. In this parish here, it's been 40 years since we've had a straight rector. We had a lesbian before. We have we just installed, and she just retired, and we now have a gay priest rector. So, and his husband, and it's and this church, has been that way for 40, almost 50 years. Very accepting. The doors are open. The Episcopals say we welcome everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that the Episcopal Church doesn't have its problems. It's very about emotion. It's like, well, it's just they're loving, but let's not, go too far into the woo.
Well, yes.
Uh,
So let me bring you back to mystical Christian. So you're talking about the institutional Christian
yeah.
compared to the mystical Christian.
Yes. Well, and the institutional Christian is very much dominated by theology and doctrine.
Hmm.
Now, the doctrine might be wide open, like the Episcopals, are very narrow, like Roman Catholics or Southern Baptists, but it's but it's still very concerned with heresy and all of those sort of things. So but I'm accepted here. People know I'm a mystical Christian. Mystical Christians, uh, basically, and there's a really great organization called ICN, which is it's an online spiritual group of people who sort of do this sort of thing. It's integral Christian network, and they're worth checking out. And if nothing else, just to read their newsletters, which come out every Saturday. So, or their little lessons that come out every Saturday. But mystical Christians believe that it's a big circle, and what mystical Christians, because mystical Christians believe that there have been very, very many enlightened beings that have been on the earth and have been great teachers. Mystical Christians believe that Jesus was the epitome of that or was the most enlightened being. But they also feel like that Buddha, Muhammad, the list goes on of people and spiritual masters who, we don't know their names, but we have some of their writings, and Gandhi was a spiritual master, Martin Luther King was a spiritual master, so on and so forth.
Okay.
People who things were revealed. And no matter what faith or road you're on, all roads lead to the center of universal consciousness.
Beautiful.
What what mystical Christians call the Christ consciousness, which was the consciousness that Jesus attained, and therefore, and the way that he explained it to people was in the language of their day and their point of reference as covenant Jews. They understood Father, they understood, but there are many other names for it.
Hmm.
And so the teachings of Jesus, and actually, one of the best things to read are the Gospels of
I
Thomas,
knew you were going to say that. Okay. Hmm.
because they're just sayings. Because the Gospels that we have in the four books are were meant to tell everybody else what the life of Jesus was and some of his teachings. And the Gospel of Thomas is just teachings, just sayings. And some of them are very difficult and challenging.
Hmm.
And
Can
and
you give us an example of a challenging one? Sorry to tax you like that, and it's okay if you can't.
no, I mean I have several examples of things that okay, this is a really good one because we're talking about sacred space and everyday woo and everything like
Yes. Good. Hmm.
um and I'm going to have to paraphrase here,
Hmm.
but it's like hang on, maybe I can just pull it up. Uh, Go to gospel.net, and that's where you can find uh, not only um, not only the Gospel of Thomas, but here we go. Here we go. And it's right at the top, so it won't take long to find. Okay. This is the second saying, and it's seek and find. So Jesus said, whoever seeks shouldn't stop until they find. And when they find, they'll be disturbed. When they're disturbed, they'll be, and then the papyrus had a hole in it, but, and when they're disturbed, they'll be blank amazed and reign over all.
Okay. That's amazing. So now that what is that called? It's a saying. What is it? It's the second one. What second what?
See, can you see?
No,
No.
no. It's
Okay, so it's the second saying.
just the second saying. Okay, so hold on, hold on. So seek and find. Keep seeking until you find. When you find, you will be disturbed. When you are disturbed, then there's a blank, but you will be amazed. To me, this is a beautiful definition of what happens when you have a woo experience. Now, not
It's a
everybody.
liminal space. It's a space between what your normal reality is and what what sacred reality is.
Beautiful, beautiful. The one thing that I want to say, because this is important to me in one of the reasons to do this show, is that people slip into that space without seeking sometimes. And then they have an experience and they feel disturbed and they don't know how to handle it sometimes. And but in the Gospel of Thomas, he's saying, if you I shouldn't say that what he's saying, but to me, what it says is if you allow yourself to be disturbed and stay grounded and not freak out, basically, you will then come to a place of amazement. And
Well, see, and you're exactly right because and then you will rule over all, and rule over all means the human side of you and the divine side of you become one, and you enter into the Christ consciousness.
beautiful. Hmm.
So, I mean, there's another one right here that I'm going to read you because it speaks
Okay.
to the thing. Let me see. Jesus said, "Blessed is the lion that's eaten by a human and then becomes human. But how awful for the human who's eaten by a lion and the lion becomes human." Okay.
Share what that means to you.
All right. Bless. And by the way, folks, you can read any wisdom sayings by any person any scriptures, any, Hinduism, you can read, yeah, you can read all Zen Buddhism, you can all of these things. And by the way, Jesus was a great Zen Buddhist. But and Buddha was a great Christian.
I love that. Yes, I agree.
But but uh, at different times in your life, you'll hear different things out of them and you'll get different things out of them. But let me read that one again because it's tough. See, you said, are there any that are challenging? And you have to try to figure it out. So to me, this means blessed is the lion that's eaten by a human, meaning the beast that eats the that is eaten by the human. And many times in mystical saying, human means child of God, your
Okay.
divinity.
Mm-hmm.
So blessed is the lion, the beast inside of you that is eaten by the human
Mm-hmm.
or the child of God.
Mm-hmm.
How awful for the human who is eaten by the lion and the lion becomes a human. Now, how many people do you know that is let the beast take them over and they are walking around and they are a beast,
Yes.
but they have a human
Yes.
image?
I think there's a lot of that going on these days. Yes. So
So,
David, this is wonderful. You're sharing so much about the church spiritual guidings. But I would like to maybe shift you a little bit into some of your own personal woo experiences.
well, let's just talk about okay, I'm going to get some of those, but I want to say that to start that would be let's talk about the woo of sacred spaces. And I don't just mean churches.
Yeah, of course.
Sacred spaces are all liminal spaces, and everybody has their own. But if you walk into a church, you feel the energy. The energy changes. If you are open to it, don't care where you walk or what kind of church or temple or whatever, the energy changes. And the greatest thing that I can tell people that has happened for me is to start to be open. Just tell myself it's okay to be open. And a lot of people, we as humans and as post-enlightenment humans and in post-industrial humans have a real transcendence bias. We're
Me.
afraid of it.
Oh, yes.
We're afraid of transcendence. We're afraid of these experiences. We have to be able to explain them. We have to be able to explain them and dismiss them.
Yes. Hmm.
And and so if you walk into a sacred space, like a temple, like a church, like a theater,
Yes.
walk into an empty theater,
Oh, yes.
the energy change. Uh, but also liminal spaces, these are liminal sacred spaces, but liminal sacred spaces out in nature. So how many, what's the phrase? A mountaintop experience
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
where the earth meets the sky, the seashore where the ocean meets the earth and the sky,
Yes.
the riverside, stream side where the earth holds the water that flows through the land. The I'm big on Celtic spirituality and mysticism as well. And by the way, Western mysticism has been buried. It is just as deep and rich, if not deeper in some aspects, than Eastern mysticism. It's just buried by the institutions because it's dangerous.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
dangerous. Jesus wrote, by the way, said, how terrible for the Pharisees, who were the religious leaders in the time, because they are like dogs who are sleeping in the cattle trough.
Mm.
The cattle can't eat, and the dog can't eat the food in the cattle trough, and so they both lose out. So
Hmm.
that is the cattle trough is the spiritual knowledge, but the Pharisees are the dogs sleeping in the cattle trough so that nobody else can eat.
Hmm.
He said that many times in different ways, that the Pharisees had the kings of the kingdom and they wouldn't share them. People in seminaries know all of the mystics and know their writings. They just don't ever preach them.
Right. Yes.
So, anyway, getting back. So, it, the
So let me just say, so what you're saying is it's not dangerous,
it's
and
not,
be open and allow.
yeah. Sacred wells are all over what were the Celtic lands. If you go to, you've been to Scotland, I know, but all through Britain and Northwest France and in Spain, which was Celtic, and all through the UK and Ireland, there are these sacred wells.
Yes.
And people tie little prayers on the trees around these sacred wells because that is the that is a liminal space. Water comes up from the earth.
Beautiful.
So, um, so yeah, you can't be scared of these things, though. And I mean, well, it's a you can, and
And me. Yes,
you can, and you will be, but
exactly.
just realize that and this is where protectors and spirit guides and things like that come in.
Realize, finish that thought. You will be scared, but realize what?
You're protected.
Okay.
You have guides to bring you through. Now, the occultists and other people, they have all of these rituals to protect themselves. The Crowley followers, and this is part of spiritualism too. Occultists are, they're out there. But they have to draw magic circles and say certain incantations, and they to protect themselves, and they have to call forth, something to control, and you can't control a sacred space.
I love that. Yes.
You are not in control. And what you were saying is people come to you and and they're put into these life-changing events, these liminal spaces, these things. And I am not a psychiatrist, but I'm just saying,
Neither am I, by the way. I'm a
but, well, or a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything, but the death of a loved one, divorce, the end of a relationship, the end of a job, the career that you thought that you,
yes.
I mean, there are the
Yes.
universe is forcing you in.
Yes. I agree.
They are, it is God, the universe, whatever, is kicking you in the pants because the call has come many, many times. The
Yes.
bell has rung and it keeps on ringing.
Yes.
The door stands before you, waiting for the knock. And on the other side of that door is a terrible challenge. But, but there is also terrible, unfathomable love and joy.
Yes.
You come through that dip and go, it's a U shape.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd like to ask you, and always, you do not have to share anything you don't want to share, but I'd like to ask you, you've shared so much. You're basically teaching us about all of this stuff, which is wonderful. You know,
Very, very surface. Very, very
well,
surface.
yes, yes, but you know all of this from life, from living it, as well, perhaps, as studying it. But I would really like to ask you for a personal, the other side of that door, there is a terrible challenge, a personal challenge that you have moved through in the way that you just described that, starting at this point of the you and ending up at this point of the you.
Well, the first one was my best friend in high school. Well, best friend growing up in high school, he kind of like started doing, being wild and crazy. And I was a very straight and narrow boy.
Woo.
Uh, yes, I was. I was perfect. If I was Catholic, I would have been an altar boy. But anyway, um, but I was always very concerned with doing the right thing, and he was a little wild. But then we came back together. Um, Actually, the year before he died, we became close again. And on prom night, my junior year, I was supposed to be in the car, but I wasn't.
Oh, wow.
They were driving back. He and another friend of mine, who was one of my best girlfriends, uh, uh, they asked me to go. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. They were going to drive her. She lived outside of town. You and I grew up in rural areas, so we know there's big spaces between towns. They fell asleep at the wheel. Jimmy did, and they crossed the line and hit a tractor trailer hauling concrete.
Oh my God.
So it just obliterated them.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Um,
I mean, I
yeah,
know years and years ago, but how can you not say sorry?
no, I mean, and he was just becoming himself.
Oh,
So of course it was a tragedy for a school, high school that a town of 10,000 people.
oh yeah.
So because two, wonderful young men had lost their lives, and we all came together,
Mm-hmm.
and and it changed my senior year,
Mm-hmm.
and it changed the way that I looked at life. And it also made me take responsibility for his youngest sister, who is still a very good friend of mine.
Okay. Mm.
And because her family fell apart.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Uh, and so, for me over the years to sort of just keep checking in with her as an older brother took on that responsibility because I only have an older sister.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that was the first one, but then there are many. I mean,
Let me ask you, how did it change your senior year? I understand how you became protective of the sister, but how did it change you in your senior year?
grief, grief, and then realizing that all of the things that you thought were important
Yes.
are not all that important.
Yes.
Um, I mean, I was still, you know, pretty much operating because it was the first liminal moment,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it didn't radically change the trajectory of my life, but it was the first lesson of,
Yes.
all of the things you thought were important are not that important.
Yes.
So have there been other liminal moments, other times when I've been kicked in the butt? And yeah, I mean, I I thought there have been times when I've come close to dying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've I mean, like accidents and things where
Oh yeah.
I've been like, oh, this is it. Or, you know,
Yes.
growing up in the South, I mean, there were several times when like guns pulled on me.
Wow. Okay.
Well, there's a lot of guns. Breaking up like some guy beating up his girlfriend, and I go stop that, and he goes, "What are you going to do about it?"
Wow.
So, you know, um,
Change your life.
yeah, well, but and also, like accidents and things like that, where you go, "No, this is it. I'm going to
Yep.
die,"
Yep.
and I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I understand that. Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there's and I've watched people deal with grief and not deal with it because some people just get stuck there.
Oh, for sure.
This is a therapist.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about the loss of a loved one. I'm talking about the loss of a relationship, a marriage, a child. I mean, I've seen people who never get over that.
Yeah.
And but if you seek it,
If you seek what?
if you seek the help to get through
Yes.
the darkness of the, unfortunately, this light is not on this stained glass window. You can't see it, but this is a stained glass window that it has a deer drinking in a stream, which is a reference to the 23rd Psalm.
Okay.
So, lo, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff that comfort me. I shall lie down beside the still waters. I shall drink from the stream. That's what that is.
Beautiful.
If you, the guarantee is there, is that hand is reaching out as you are sinking in that quicksand. Your
Yes.
spiritual guides, whatever you want to call them, angels, guardian angels, past loved ones who are on the other side, who are now a lot more knowledgeable, and none of them are bound by the rules of space and time.
Beautiful. Mhm.
No, seriously, think about that, because we think linearly. So we go, well, they're probably too busy right now doing something. Jesus is probably, no, there's no space and time.
I love it. Yeah, of course.
No, Jesus is not too busy over there. Buddha can't, the third Dalai Lama, he's having lunch with somebody else. Can't come over. No, they're not bound by space and time. They can be there. Oh, I really wish my guardian angel was around. Maybe they'll be back from their lunch break soon. No, no, they're there.
And so, what are you saying? I have an interpretation that I may share or may not. What are you saying is the key to allowing that to, I could say to show up, but really to be realized? What's the key?
Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and it shall be open. To
Okay. So, what I would say as a therapist is feel. You said earlier, grief, some people kind of, you didn't use the word, but suppress it. They don't allow themselves to feel it. If you allow yourself to feel whatever that experience brings to you, it could be fear, it could be grief, it could be confusion. But if you really allow yourself to feel it, I would say that's my, as a therapist, that's my interpretation of ask and ye shall receive.
Well, what are the 12-step programs all about? The
Well,
12-step programs are about going, I need help.
yes,
I can't handle this on my own.
yes.
I have to admit I have a problem and it's too big for me to handle on my own.
So now we're kind of talking about surrender as well, which is, I think, a feel.
Well, you can't go into the liminal space. I mean, when you start working with somebody, they have to submit to your leadership and guidance. Now,
Well, I disagree.
well, they're entering a space and there is a contract. Now, I know that therapists don't like to admit this, but and psycho, but it is a joint journey, but
Sure.
you have to
Person is not submitting to me. They are
no.
opening themselves to their own stuff, whatever that is. They're not submitting or
Well,
surrendering
no,
to me.
maybe I misspoke or misstated. I don't mean they have to, but I think I said this, is they have to submit to the space,
The space.
and then for you to be their guide, to help them through the threshold over into this space, and then to discuss things and start to work through all of these things. But always in any kind of space, there has to be a ritual leader. There has to be an elder. There has to be a priest. There has to be a guru.
So I would agree, but I think it's extremely important. And you tell me in these other liminal spaces where you're talking about other types of leadership and gurus or whatever, tell me if this is true. I would agree that's the job, at least as I define it, at least part of the job of a therapist, to reflect back to the person what is going on. And usually we reframe a little bit if there's an issue going on, of course. But it is the person's responsibility and job to either accept or deny that interpretation. And it's really important for that person to say, oh, no, I disagree. That's part of the journey as well.
Exactly, because anytime that you reflect something back to somebody and they agree or they disagree, it's growth.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, it's part of the process because it's not nothing about that you. It looks like a straight line, but really it's a labyrinth.
Yes.
And how many myths are about, you know, the cave, the
Yes.
maze, the labyrinth, the these are all people have known this since the beginning of stories.
Yes. And it is the individual's journey. That's the only reason I
Yes, it's the hero of a thousand faces. It's Joseph Campbell. It's Joseph Campbell is the best person because a lot of this stuff you read gets into psychology and therapy and things like that. Whereas Joseph Campbell was a mythologist, so he just said, "Well, look here, all of these world mythologies, all of this," and he was kind of a Jungian, but he wasn't really a Jungian. But it's the archetypes, the all of these things. And for me, as a mystical Christian, all of those things inform me, but also a lot of the things that are just either revealed or through knowledge. I mean, you can't get through all of this stuff with knowledge.
no.
Knowledge only goes, you know, knowledge is about that. If it's all about knowledge for you, you're a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yes. Yes.
Because then it's all theology, then it's all books, then it's all doctrine, then it's all I can explain this for you,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you can't. As I said before, you're not in control.
Yes.
This the spirit's going to move you where it's going to move you, as they say in the Southern Baptist tradition that I grew up. The spirit's going to move you.
So let me ask you for one more, and then we'll probably have to start to wrap up maybe, for one more experience where you were not in control and the spirit was moving you.
Mm. Oh, I think. All right, I'll give you a recent example
Yeah.
because you and I have not talked for several years.
Yes.
And you barely ever post anything on social media.
Yes.
And you posted one of these episodes like, "Oh, I'm doing this series and it's there." And I reached out to you and I said, "Congratulations, wonderful. I'm glad you're doing this." And that could have been the end of it.
Yes. Mhm.
It wasn't. It's like the first time that I met you. We can talk about this. The first time that I met you was here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and we were called you were at a dinner where you didn't really know anybody, and I was at a dinner where I didn't really know anybody. It was a celebration of something, and I knew the guy that had organized it. I don't know how you were there,
I don't remember.
but you were sitting across from me, and everybody was loud, all restaurants in New York, it was a long table, but they're all loud. And everybody was talking and everybody was laughing, and we were in our 20s. And I said something, and you looked at me and you said something smart alecky.
Yes, I have a tendency to do that sometimes.
And I went, who is that? And it was an instant connection.
Yes.
And before we left, I got your phone number, you got mine, and it was just like I had to know more about you. And I think, we've talked about it since you've felt sort of like this instant, like,
Yes.
yeah, this person might get me.
Yes.
When I had never met my wife, and I was sitting in a meeting, I was directing a play, I was in a production meeting, I was looking for somebody to be my casting director or assistant director, maybe casting director, whatever. And one of the women in the group, because they'd all like gone to the same acting class, and they said, well, what about Ann Kelly, who's my wife? And you can look me up on social media, so that won't be a secret. And literally a bell like went off in my head.
Wow.
Like literally, I heard a bell in my head.
Wow. Yeah.
And and I tried to play it cool because it was so like it hit me. And I went, oh yeah, isn't she? I was totally thinking, turn around, isn't she so and so? No, no, because I didn't know her from Adam.
Wow.
It's just like it hit me. So I pretended like I knew who she was, or might know who she was, or might know somebody that knew who she was, so I could gather more information. Because it just hit me so hard. Um, and there are other. I just closed a play off Broadway where it was a very difficult Arthur Miller play called The Price, where it's about these two brothers, and they are estranged, and they've been estranged for several years, and they have to come together to sort of sell the father's estate, and and they and the younger brother really hates the older brother. I mean, he blames him for a lot of things, and the older brother is a real jerk, but he's trying, and he's come to try to make peace with it. And and if those two brothers don't click, I mean, there are two other characters in the play, but if they don't click, it's over.
Yeah.
And I went in and I knew this actor because I'd seen him in another play, but then when I walked into auditions, he was there, and I read with a bunch of other people. He read with a bunch of other people, and then they put us together, and it was fireworks in the
Wow.
audition.
Yes.
And it was that way through. And I mean, he's become a really close friend, but it was like, when artistically things click,
Yeah.
because art is just God. God is a creator.
I agree. That's wonderful. Mm.
That's what it is. And I love all art forms, but I have to say that theater is our oldest art form because stories around a campfire with somebody acting them out
Yes.
is just ingrained in us.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
telling stories, everybody's an actor. Everybody's an actor. That's why people don't really respect actors as much as musicians. They go, well, I could do that. Maybe I couldn't memorize the lines, but I could do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway, so is so I know that a lot of this stuff has been kind of paranormal in past, or some of your people have been paranormal. I'll give you one paranormal.
Well, let me just say, this is one of the reasons I love talking with you today, because I don't think that the woo is only paranormal. I love the spiritual aspects that you've been talking about today, because I include that in what the woo is. And so you may go ahead and share paranormal, but I'm not
Okay.
looking for that in any way.
So we started off talking about biochemical
Yes.
energy and
Yes.
like that. So when my daughter was in middle school,
Mm.
which if you've had a middle school age daughter, you know the drama. Well, you have two sisters. You remember.
I've been a young lady in middle school, yes.
Right. So anyway, so she was on about something, it was teenage drama, which is a legitimate concern. It's big to them.
Oh,
It seems parents never dismiss, what they're going through because it's very real for them if
yeah.
you don't remember. But anyway, and she was going off and on. She was getting angrier and angrier. And I was standing in the living room as she was going on, and there was a shelf behind me, and it had like little tchotchkes on it. And all of a sudden, one of the tchotchkes behind me went
Yeah.
and landed about 6 feet away. Now, it stunned my daughter.
Yes.
She was like, and and
Did she know what happened?
well, she said it just flew off. It
Yeah.
just flew off. And I went, yeah. And of course, there are theories in ghost hunting circles and so on and so forth that are in psychic circles that teenage, especially teenage girls, have so much energy going on that psychically things move.
Yeah. I would say, was she, you might have said this, was she angry? I would say it was the energy of,
She was angry. Yeah, she wasn't angry at me. She
yeah,
was angry at a situation.
yeah. Okay.
Some
Mm-hmm.
friend had done something wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was upset about that. Speaking of my daughter, another sort of weird thing.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
when my daughter's name is Maggie, when she was still in the womb, we were trying to decide on a name. My wife had a great grandmother called Maggie Mackay, who lived on an island off the coast of Northern Ireland called Rothland. And the family farm's still there and family still live there.
Beautiful.
It's it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Feels like home to me whenever we're there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But she really wanted the name Maggie, and of course, from a big Irish Catholic family, there are Mary Margarets and Margaret Marys and Megans and Megans and so on and so forth. So we're trying to get to Maggie, and so her mother's name was Mary. My father's name was Garland.
Mhm.
And so she decided to combine the name. So she was Mary Garland, and then we make it Maggie.
Mhm.
So anyway, we had never been to the island. Anne had never been there. Every family trip, she had been doing something else. So we went all together, and we were in the churchyard. And of course, this is Northern Ireland, so there's a Catholic church and there's an Anglican church, but only the Anglican church, because of the rocky soil, has a graveyard. So all the Catholics and Anglicans are buried in the grave. And we found her great grandmother's grave, and her we look, and it's Maggie Mackay, and and um and the date of her birth was the same day as my daughter's.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
We never knew that.
Now wait, you were visiting before your daughter was born?
No, we were just at home. This was my daughter was by this time. We still didn't know this. This was when my wife was adamant that she had to be named Maggie,
Right.
and didn't know why. It
Okay.
was just so have to come up with a name, get to Maggie.
Yeah.
My daughter is 18 by the time we finally get to Rothland,
Oh, wow.
and 17. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is she with you when you're looking at that gravestone? And so everyone's jaws drop at the same time?
yes, yes, cousin Margaret, goes, oh, you got to come over and you got to see, this is where, Maggie and John are buried, and, come over here, and they're
Wow.
other family members have been there, and it never clicked with them. They'd never told us
Oh, wow.
because
Mm-hmm.
they knew. I mean, her grandparents had been there, her aunts and uncles had been there, and we had always missed the trip. And
I
so
see.
we just went by ourselves, and there it was.
Incredible.
Isn't it though? You
Yeah.
know what? That's kind of a woo moment, isn't
I
it?
think that is a woo moment, and I think that's a beautiful place for us to wrap up.
No, I think part two and part three are.
For sure. You are absolutely welcome to come back because I know you have so much to share.
No,
It's,
I'm pretty much done. I'm yeah,
I know.
that's it. There's nothing left. It's
No, I'm sure that's not true, but I really want to thank you for sharing this side of the woo, the spiritual side of the woo, with all the things that we talked about, the Gospel of Thomas, the U curve, the knocking of the door, the answering the call, and
and I want to, I don't know if I really touched on this, and this is good, is because we kind of did, but there's always that hand to reach down.
did mention that.
I
Yes.
know, but it starts to bring you up. But then when you get to that place where the door out is,
Yes.
you got to get through that door too.
Okay.
You got to re-enter into carrying, Joseph Campbell called it carrying the boon of the knowledge that you have learned. The the elixir of life is
And
what
so
it is.
to me, when I hear that, that would be, at least in part, sharing the knowledge that you have gained. Is that at all what you're talking
Yes,
about?
or just living your life. I mean, because everybody that we come in contact with, we're sharing something with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what you bring to that, whether it be anger and hate and or whether it be communitas, which when 9/11 happened,
Hmm.
New Yorkers
Yes,
all became one.
absolutely.
During the pandemic, every night when we would bang the pots to thank the nurses and the doctors and the EMS people,
Yeah.
the first responders for doing their jobs. During 9/11, when we every time a fire engine would pass by, we would clap.
Mhm.
That's communitas.
Mhm.
Everybody coming together.
Mhm.
So, and you see it all the time. If you live in a small town, you don't see it as much. But like somebody trips on the sidewalk in New York,
Mhm.
five people rush over. Everybody's got out their phone about to dial 911. Another person is checking, are you all right? Blah, blah, blah. For that moment,
Yeah,
they are one.
absolutely. That's
Communitas. So, so you're always sharing with people, you know, how you treat waiters and waitresses, how you treat the checkout person, what love you bring to it is a boon. And if you've gone through it and what those dark times teach you,
Mhm.
the night boat journey, the dark night of the soul, all of those things, what they teach you is empathy
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
they teach you love
Yes.
and they destroy everybody. You do need your ego. You cannot live without
I
ego.
agree with that. Yes.
People,
You
ego is what
can't.
helps you drive the car and cross the street.
That's right.
Yeah, sweep
Totally.
the floor. I mean, you need it. You need a healthy ego. So people go, "Oh, I don't have an ego." Hey,
Yeah, you do.
do you have a healthy ego?
That's the question. Great. Hmm.
And so uh, it so what those dark nights do is they they break down the things that your ego has built up since childhood to
Sure.
deal with this crap of a world.
Yeah. I,
And to keep you going so that you don't fall apart. And that was a function of your ego, but that is what Jesus means when the two become one. You will reign over all.
beautiful. Back to the lion
Yeah.
from Gospel of Thomas. Yeah.
And there are several sayings like that in Thomas. I mean, he says it several different ways, but yeah, it's when the lion, but when the human eats the lion.
Yes. And so these woo experiences can, and probably most, I would never say all, most of them do play a part in bringing those two, the lion and the human, together within us.
Yeah, and then you realize your divinity.
Yes.
You realize that just Jesus said, I'm you and you are me. If you drink from my mouth, he says this in the Gospel of Thomas, you become me and I become you.
And
And
so
child of God, just like I am.
what you're saying in another way is that, and you said this early on when you shared the first experience with your friend from high school, you said you changed. When we go through these experiences, our perception changes, and we see, you also said, the things that used to be important to you were no longer important. Everything changes, and then we begin that journey of the two becoming one.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, David, thank you very, very much.
It's Cullen, I think you forgot.
Ah,
You said you were going to do that.
I
Okay.
almost forgot.
Because I'm an actor professionally, I'm calling him, but uh, David is so anyway.
Yes,
Uh,
I'm so sorry. I almost made it through the entire.
no, you didn't. That was the second time you did it.
Was it? Okay. So yes, everybody, this is Cullen Wheeler, formerly known to me in my younger life as David, which is why I've slipped twice and I apologize.
Yeah, she was 8 and I was 12 when we met for the first.
Now he's lying, but
Now we're only in our 40s.
thank you again, Cullen Wheeler, for being here and sharing such a rich knowledge base, as well as deep love and some of your personal experiences as well. It's been very beautiful and I'm sure very helpful to other people. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you for having me, Amy. I was happy to do it.
Great. And maybe you'll come back for part two, because I think you have more to share. But anyway, thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you next time on the Everyday Woo. Bye-bye.
Bye.